Welcome to the Research Works podcast, brought to you in association with the Healthy Strides Foundation. Your hosts are Dr. Dana Poole
and Dr. Ashley Thornton, and we're here to interview world-leading researchers, clinicians and people with lived experience
to support your practice in being more evidence-based.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Research Works.
Welcome back. It's lovely to have you join us for another conversation, for another week in one of our last few episodes for the season.
I can't believe it. It has been a huge season this year, nearly 60 episodes in 2025. But to finish off the season, we have a wonderful guest that I'm sure you will all be very excited to hear from. Welcome to the pod, Professor Olaf Kraus de Camargo.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm impressed how much you did this whole year. It's really amazing.
I know. I was shocked to see that number as well. It's a lot of episodes.
It's a lot of talking.
A lot of talking. Yeah. And so many great conversations. And I love that we're going to be wrapping up our season in speaking with you, Olaf. You recently published a viewpoint in BMJ Paediatrics Open just a few months ago, and it's titled Taking a Strengths-Based Approach to Developmental Disability, the F Words for Child Development. Everything about that title is enticing, exciting. All my favourite words seem to be in there. It is just brilliant. And so we're really looking forward to hearing your thoughts and walking us through this paper. Yeah,
we sure are. But before we get into the paper, we want to introduce Olaf more formally to the pod. Dr. Olaf Kraus de Camargo is a professor in the Department of Paediatrics at McMaster University and co-director of the CanChild Centre for Childhood Onset Disability Research. A developmental paediatrician with expertise in social paediatrics and child neurology, he focuses on strength-based approaches to child development. Olaf earned his medical degree from the University of Sao Paulo and completed paediatric training there, followed by specialised residencies in Germany. Before joining McMaster, he served as medical director and CEO of a paediatric centre in Germany and professor of social medicine at the University of Applied Sciences in Nordhausen.
That's such an amazing bio, Olaf. Well-travelled as well.
Yeah, I got around.
It's all the experience, isn't it? Picking up from different places and it's so wonderful. Really great.
But before we jump into discussing your very exciting paper, we are going to do our icebreaker question, which I'm going to have to give a bit of background to because otherwise it could sound offensive. So we know the F words for child development, but what other words beginning with F are important to you, or what is your favourite other F word?
Great question.
And if you want time to think, Olaf, we can go first, but otherwise, would you like to go?
I think both as a researcher and a clinician, the biggest barrier that we encounter is the lack of funding. So that would be a major barrier. And so funding, I think, needs to be promoted more.
Yes.
Do you know, absolutely, because that makes perfect sense, but I didn't think of that one. So
that is such a good one because that's what facilitates all these opportunities, whether it's funding in for individuals, whether it's research. Oh, that's so fantastic, isn't it? And as someone who's done so much research and for someone who's in the position you are at CanChild, you'll see the instrumental effect of having the right funding in the right places to drive initiatives.
Oh, that's awesome.
That was good. And that was really deep. And now I feel really bad about mine.
I can guess yours. What's yours, Dana?
Well, over the many seasons that we've had, I think I've always said this. I think my favourite F word that should be added to this is food. This is now why it seems very...
I completely agree.
Thank you, Olaf. Thank you. I feel like if I had to, combine and be the glue between these F words, for me, food is that beautiful conversation piece. And I find that my interactions with people are built around food, being able to be generous with food. And it's my favorite pastime, I'd say. I love different cuisines and different cultures. And that's how I get to know people is through the medium that is food. And that's me in a nutshell. What describes Dana? Food. An absolute love for food. Street food, fine dining, everything. I save up my money for these experiences. That's,
I love that.
Thank you.
I was also thinking that, but I'm going to go a bit left of field again.
Okay.
and say fiction. Because even when you're saying about Olaf, from Frozen, and you said you had the character on your door, I was thinking how important fiction is, not only to children, I guess as our childhood when we grow up, we grow up with these, fantasy and another F word, and these fiction stories, which, help us, escape sometimes the busy world and get this make-believe that evokes a lot of happiness in us.
And facilitates play and fun, imagination.
Yep.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So I just have this image of Olaf and Frozen and just how much fun and joy that brings. And, that's, a relatively new-ish Disney film, but it has really, held its time, and it brings, whenever you see kids, that song comes on. We used to sing it 10 years ago while people were treadmill training.
Yeah, that's right.
And the joy that it brings. So I think fiction is also a winner.
Oh, and the kids must love seeing you in clinic, Olaf, just to be able to say, that's Olaf. Yeah. That is absolutely
but it's
brilliant.
always it is a fun icebreaker to come to start a consultation.
Yeah.
I can't take credit for that one, but it is a great one. So thank you to the creator.
So good.
So Olaf, can you start by telling us a bit more about your background in paediatrics and how you became involved in this area of research around childhood disability and development?
Yeah, so curious about this.
So I don't know how far back you want to go.
Wherever you want to start, it's fine.
So maybe, at one station before I started more the executive roles of a director of a clinical center, I was in an academic center and did a doctoral thesis there. And in that doctoral thesis, I wanted to use the GMFM. And so I emailed Peter Rosenbaum, and that was my first contact with CanChild. And since then, I followed CanChild. I know and that was, I think, 96 or something.
Wow,
brilliant.
And some years later, I visited CanChild, visited Peter, and at that time, they were developing the measures of processes of care. And that focused me even more into that aspect, that importance that somebody was researching. How are the families actually doing? We do so much research about, there was the start of doing Botox. Does Botox work? Does it make a difference? And so all this very medical. Yeah. And there was a guy who was thinking completely in a different direction, not dismissing any of that other research, but thinking, what about the parents? What about the families? How do they appreciate their work and what we offering them? Is that the right way we're doing it? I think since then that has become really part of my attitude and practice in the daily encounters with patients.
That's incredible. I love that. It has everything in it. The reaching out to people to ask questions, which is just so important for us to be curious. And then those encounters with people that really open up your viewpoint and your perspective of things beyond what we're seeing. And you're right, in the 90s, there was a huge body of work that was really starting, wasn't it? That botulinum toxin was really becoming something people were exploring. But yes, very, very medical, important. But what was the other side? I love that. That has everything.
Was there a specific moment or an experience that highlighted the need for this strengths-based approach in child development and then led you to write this article?
No, that was actually more, that's an interesting story. So I was co-editor of the special issue of this BMJ. It's a special issue about development and disability in children. And the editor-in-chief that you probably know, Dr. Shanti Raman or Professor Shanti Raman in Sydney, she had invited me to co-edit some of the papers. And then I don't know how she came across the F words, but she mentioned to me, and I visited Australia recently, and then I visited their center, and they are actually using the F words in their clinical documentation. And we weren't aware of that here in Canada. And so there was an interest of the F words. And so she asked me, Olaf, we are doing this special issue. Would you like to describe a bit more about the F words and the strengths-based approach? That was their motivation to use the F words, is to approach patients and families from a strengths perspective and not from a deficit perspective. And that actually got me reading more about the strengths-based model. I knew well the efforts, I know well the ICF, and strengths-based was always a term that I used like colloquially. It's okay, we are strengths-based, but where does it come from? I was not aware of that. So that came by preparing this paper and reading the book from by Charles Rapp, and as a whole book, the strengths model, and there came these, and it was really enlightening. So, well, that wow effect. Oh, wow. Like 50 years ago, people were already thinking that and were proposing that, and how long it takes for that to become embedded into a clinical practice, like I was seeing then in Sydney or in our practice in other places around the world. So that was really fascinating. It was a fun job to write this paper.
You bring it all together so well.
Yes. I know. I mean, the fact that you went back again, like, this curiosity to go back to figure out where this all came from, because you're absolutely right. We've all started saying the strengths-based approach. What does it actually mean? And I love that you went on that journey to look at that. Do you mind helping us to walk through that? Because I was most curious about that. You write about it and summarize it so beautifully in this paper. Of where it came from, 50 years ago. Do you mind just taking us through that? Because I know that there was this, the damage model that was referred to as well. Can you walk us through that process? I found that fascinating.
So Charles Rapp and other colleagues at the time, they were mostly out of the adult healthcare field and in the field of mental health. So there where it came from. And that was also the era of thinking about the mental health institutionalization and all these things that were being questioned and debated. Is that the right way to treat people with mental health conditions? Should we really have them as inpatients, or can't they live with us?
Right.
And I think from that perspective came that, okay, we're just looking at the damage. We're just looking at what is not working well. Why don't we look what resources are there, what they can have? And they propose certain aspects that include the patients in the discussion. For example, in choosing a goal, what is personally meaningful for you? Not that the clinicians define, oh, you need to get a job, or you need to do this, or you need to... No, what are things that you actually like to do? And start from that point, and then work out from there, and assessing really all the strengths that are not only within that person, but also around them. What supports do you have from family, from friends? Who can you rely on, for example? Who do you call when you need some help? And looking at that environment and what the environment as a community can also offer them. And instead of segregating them in institutions, investing in community resources that allow them to live in the community and be with other members of society and establish new relationships. And they have a term in the book which I really liked, is hope-inducing relationships. So when you have the opportunity to meet somebody or to do something with another person and you feel valued, that also generates more hope in yourself that you are able to do. And if you think that about children, for example, just to go to a corner store and order, I don't know, a liter of milk on your own. And you're able to get that, and you're able to be recognized. And that is already values you as a person.
Yes.
And that's... if you call it therapeutic or pedagogic or just empowering or whatever, I don't care.
All of those
but
things,
I think all these things. But I think it is important really to establish situations where this can happen. And I think that's something that is really changing how we're approaching therapy now in comparison to when I was trained.
Yeah. I mean, that is incredible that these thoughts, like you said, were really written, 50 years ago, this real approach. What do you think has taken, it's taken a little while to trickle its way into our area. I mean, now it's something that I always view, and this is the perspective I have now, but it's taken time. What do you think has influenced that process, do you think, from that initial thought that they had back then?
Well, I can't think about it. I can only speculate.
Yes, of course. Yeah,
but it's I think on one hand, it is also within society as a whole. Any issue with health that has to do with the body is seen as a medical issue and is seen as something that all of us, when we have something, we go to the doctor and then we receive a prescription and we go and diligently take that if we remember. And so if we remember, we're compliant. If not, we're non-compliant. But it's that attitude, okay, there's a professional who tells you what to do and you follow these directions or not. But that's that unidirectional conversation that is happening.
Yeah.
And I think it needs a lot of work to change that mindset also in the clients and patients and families when they approach a professional. So it's a different attitude. How you approach a professional is not just being quiet and waiting what they tell you, is really talking to them. Hey, that's what I need, or that's what I want to do, and these are things that are important for me. Or say, no, I don't want to do that. That's not important for me. So that's the one part. The other, I think, is us professionals. It's much easier to just tell people what to do. And if they don't do what you told them to do, it's their fault. It's not your fault. Right?
Yeah.
So you need to engage much more to have that family-centered perspective and strengths-based perspective. And that is also something that is not taught. So if you're not taught to act that way, how will you learn that? So I think it takes several generations of this trickling down from clinicians to some of them become teachers. Some of their students take it on, and it multiplies only slowly at the beginning, but then probably every time faster and faster.
Yeah.
And your podcast is a promoter of that acceleration.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's absolutely the case because it's the viewpoint that has been published that has resonated. And then when you apply it in real life every single day in clinic to the kids that you work with, the families you work with, it makes sense. And, to share something here, I just received a message from a mum just yesterday, actually, Olaf. And this is a child we've been working with since the beginning of Healthy Strides, so about 8 years ago. And it's when we really implemented all of the F words into what it is that we do and, really thought about what that child wanted within that family in the context. And just yesterday, she sent me a photo of him it's a standing frame, but it's a dynamic one that he can roll himself around in. And it was mainly because walking was very exhausting for him around the house, but he wanted to be upright. So, following that lead, he did that. And then for the first time, she sent the photo of him at the table making a pizza with her for the very first time at 9 years of age. And she was thrilled. He was so happy.
It's delightful.
It was the most amazing thing. And you go, when you see this implemented and those hope-building relationships and you're valuing the person for what they want in the context of their family, it makes a difference. And so you can't help to be converted. It doesn't mean that the other things don't matter. Of course, when he has botulinum toxin is important and we want to build his, all his capacity, but this is the stuff that matters. This is the life stuff that we remember. And I love that you've taken us on that journey about it. It's just absolutely brilliant. And every day, if you put it into practice, you see it. So profound. Yeah.
That's exactly what kept coming to me when I was reading your article. Yes. This story that we received yesterday.
Yeah.
And being like, this is what it's about. In case we constantly have it validated. But and it just, I think it's something that as a clinician we are constantly reminded, and even though we already hope that we do things in a certain way and, talk to families and question families, especially in assessments in a certain way, even reading your article, I was reflecting, I can ask them more to share stories. I can ask them, more about their strengths rather than what it is, where are our goals, what are we working on, whilst that is important. It's important to know what are their strengths, what do they love.
Yeah.
We can constantly do those things better.
Yeah.
And so, just from where we started with, being very much impairment based. And, even when we're at university.
Not enough muscle strength, not enough range of motion. It was always that, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And whilst that is important to acknowledge, because obviously that plays into things, I think when you hear stories like Dana shared or talk about what you said, how it's evolved, and we constantly put it into practice, but not only that, we constantly reflect on how we can do it better and better.
Yeah.
It's incredible, and I'm excited to see where we'll get to, but that's a later question. So
you're getting us too excited now, Olaf.
I'm going back on track. All right, so we'll jump into now about the F words. So many of our listeners, I know we've spoken about it in podcasts before with the F words for child development.
Theme. Yep.
So it would be lovely to hear from you. How do the F words map onto the WHO's International Classification of Functioning, Disability and Health Framework?
Yeah, so the F words are, and that's not my my idea. That is Willem Gorter and Rosenbaum's idea. So I think the story they tell us is that after conference they had a chat and thought, well, we need to make that easier for everybody to understand, like these terms, body structures and functions, activities, participation. Well, participation maybe is understandable. Environmental factors, everybody just thinks about the climate, which is important. But environment is more than that. And personal factors, nobody knows exactly what that is when you try to explain that, right? So they try to find words that fit as an exemplar for these domains. So I think that's also important when we explain the F words, say, well, that's just one word. But as you said, there are many other words, and they don't even have to start with F, but they relate to all these domains. So for body structure and function, they chose the term fitness because you need to be fit regardless of your impairments. Fitness is an important aspect of health. And the classification is a classification of health, not just disability.
That's right.
Functioning, disability, and health. So being healthy, both mentally and physically, regardless of your limitations, is an important aspect. And functioning was used for, initially they put function, but then that was corrected to functioning, because function is very much describing the body function. So not to confuse that, functioning we understand as what people do, like what you're able to do. And then if you are doing something where you're participating, then you are functioning. And participating for kids is often with friends, to be in a play with friends, be around friends. And then if you go to the environmental factors or the context as a total, is the environment is anything in the ICF. It is the natural environment, the built environment, the social environment, the attitudes of people, the climate, temperature, whatever you can choose. But the environment that is the most standard and constant in the life of a child is their family, however that is composed and however they define what is their family. But that is the inner circle from the Bronfenbrenner idea. That's the inner circle that really matters to the child most.
Beautiful.
So that was the word family. And then this personal is something, okay, what distinguishes you from others? And Dana, you said, well, Dana is food, right? I love street food. So your personal factor would be a food lover. And these are questions that I asked my patients. So what kind of person are you? What kind of kid are you? What makes you special? What makes you unique? What do other kids say about you? Are you funny, or are you helpful, or are you whatever? So I put these words into my reports, so the kids can also read them later when they read. One day they will read their reports, right? Nothing more is lost anymore. Everything is documented somewhere. So
that's right.
Thinking about what they will read one day about themselves, right? And then they added a word that is not part of the ICF, that is future, to remind us, and not just us, the families, the clinicians, that anything we do will have an impact on the future of a child, and that child will one day be an adult. And what is important during childhood to become an adult that is happy with the situation they're living in, they are confident in what they do. And that forces us also to think about, okay, how much therapy, for example, do we do? How many hours of your life in childhood have you spent in therapies, and how many hours in the park, and how many hours with friends? And what makes you actually an adult is that not so therapy part, right?
That's right.
These social connections, are the friendships, are the things that you discover that you like or that you do not like. So exploring different activities or sports or games or whatever you like to do, you need to have the opportunity to explore that in life as a child. So that's something to keep in mind when we think about future.
Olaf, I love how you say you use the F words in your reports. And I think, back to maybe reports a decade ago or so, when sometimes we'd write about, what they can't do and, obviously what we want to try and work on. And we're always, soon as a child achieves something, obviously you want that incremental challenge, you challenge them again. And whilst that's important, as a child, you want them to know that they can succeed, that not everything is always a struggle. You want them to have fun. You want to use equipment so they can get upright and they can, enjoy certain things. So I think it just changes that whole mindset. And
it really does.
I think leading that from not only, a physician's perspective, but, therapists as well, it's exciting for their future where it's going to put them, because we may have children that become adults. And I know when I've worked with adults, a number have said, I'm done with therapy. I'm done. And and so if we can change this from childhood, it's quite incredible
in this generation.
And even building their empowerment and their mental health and well-being. I think this all falls under those F words. It's just...
And there's such a responsibility element, as you described that, any encounter that you have with a person, we talk about leadership as a skill of influence, right? And we're all leaders when it comes to the workplaces that we're in, and how we influence the family and how we influence the child is to provide this kind of information. You described it so beautifully, because we're constantly thinking about how we can influence that person to be the best version of themselves and to have the future that they deserve. And I love how you talked about the fact that they will one day read their reports, and will they read that report and go, wow, look what I did when I was a child. Wow. Look at all the people who are around me. Or is it like, wow, that wasn't great. I'm not good at this. I'm not good at that. No one wants to hear that. And that has challenged me to think about, in terms of reports, we've got to think about that element, because they have a right to read it, and they will one day. And what a great accountability there. So good.
You've already told us how you use the F words in your reports, which I think is fantastic.
Beautiful.
But I'm curious about an real life example that you can give us of how you've shifted, how the F words shift the focus from fixing deficits to empowering participation, and what that might look like in a clinical setting.
Yeah.
Maybe I give an example of a more broader example of what we do at our center here. So I work as a developmental pediatrician at the Ron Joyce Children's Health Center, which is part of the McMaster Children's Hospital. And we have all the traditional therapy that the OT, physio, social workers, psychologists, but we also have recreational therapists. And in the last years, that group of therapists and their importance as being more and more recognized. And what they do, they offer activities that are to some point adapted to the limitations of the different patients. They are not diagnosis specific. It doesn't matter what type of diagnosis you have, you can join those activities. And they are intended to facilitate the engagement or connection of these children with the wider community. So they start within our center, and examples of activities are, for example, a choir. We have a choir group. We have a cheer squad. So these are cheerleaders, and from time to time they can go to games and participate in cheerleading. We have a robotics team that is competing in robotics competitions. And so these are activities. And when I was in Australia, I saw the sports stars activities that Georgina Clutterbuck does in Brisbane. And so I think these are examples where you switch around a little bit what is really important for this child to participate, and offer then opportunities that can be helpful. And then when you discover if that is an activity, for example, now let's take the robotics group where they build robots and they program them and code. And then you can, as a therapist, be joined in and say, okay, what does this kid need to be able to execute that function that they want to be part of? And do I need to change anything in their wheelchair, for example, to make it better for that thing that they do? And so on. So the therapist really goes into the activity that the child has chosen to participate in, and enables them to do that better or with more fun. And then it makes also much more sense to the child. So I'm strong supporter of this development. And I spoke this week with one of the recreational therapists. He said that one of the challenges that they still encounter is the parents sometimes are in parallel on a waiting list for physio, for example, and so this is fun here, this is nice, but I still don't get physio, and the child is in an adapted ice hockey team, right, and goes to games and plays every week, and he said, well, maybe it doesn't even need physio anymore. They are engaged, they are participating. There is some, but that I think that's a difficulty to bring that also towards the families to understand that this is actually something really helpful and probably more helpful than spending a lot of hours in physio and not having that opportunity to engage in a team and to have that experience of winning and losing and frustration, but this is all building your development as to one day become an adult person.
That is fantastic. You described it perfectly there. You know, we encounter this all the time as well. You know, in a way, you have a profession and a name for a profession, and it helps people to identify what it is that you do. I'm a physiotherapist, occupational therapist. Therefore, when a parent's seeking support, they will find a physiotherapist or an occupational therapist, a speech pathologist. But the problem with that is that it just makes it so siloed. And I often say to families, you know, a child doesn't come to a therapy session and go, I'm doing physio now, then I'm doing OT, and then I'm doing speech. They really just come in to play, and we're looking for opportunities to engage. And I wonder whether there's something there that we can, even how we, not that it's a beautiful word, but, you know, market ourselves in terms of to families, in terms of what it is that we do. We're not doing physiotherapy because that makes it so siloed, and you feel like you need to tick the box. I've done my physio today. I've done my OT today. You know, whereas if we turn it to the F words, you've done life today, and, you know, someone's come along to help you to make this more possible. But I wonder if there's a reframe there, because you're absolutely right. You know, it's people are seeking these therapies, but almost not identifying that when you have these great opportunities to engage, that is exactly what we want, and that's where we want to head.
And there's only so many hours in the week, as we all know, and we know that parents are increasingly busier. So they've got multiple children, or depending on where they live, or if they're in a city or rurally, and you know, back in the traditional model where they might do OT, physio and speech once a week after school, well, that's 3 days after school, which for any child just going to school is often enough. And then, you know, the families, I think, to be able to release them to not feel that pressure to have to do it just because that's what you do, but rather if you're having weekly physio, what is the reason behind that? What are you working on that the child, you know, loves, that brings them joy and that is looking at their future, you know, protecting their body and things like that, preventing pain is still, like you said, we're still mindful of these things. And that's our role and expertise in, you know, as physios. But yeah, they are still a child, and a part of that is educating families that, you know what, you don't have to do things just because, and actually prioritising things like the things the recreational therapists do should actually happen.
That's so good. And how do you, Olaf, from your experience, you know, you would have had these conversations with families before about this very thing. How do you talk to them about this to sort of, you know, provide them with that support and discussion and education around what therapy looks like, you know, because you can't fit it all in. How do you talk to them about this?
So I think it comes up more naturally when you already engaging in a conversation about what is the life like of these children, what they like to do.
Beautiful.
So if for example, music comes up or singing, then I thought, well, you like singing, you like to listen to watching YouTube videos or TikToks and sing along. You know what? There is a choir. You can participate in that, right? Or if I have many boys that say they want to be a game programmer when they grow up, right? And program video games. That's a common dream profession nowadays.
Yes.
So well, you can start this now. You can join the robotics club. They teach you coding, and you program a robot, and you compete. And so I think it's not like you have it doesn't come with a diagnosis. It comes with the life of the person, and you need to ask the person how their life is to make a recommendation that is tailored to their preferences.
How can, which I completely agree, and we often have these kinds of discussions. What happens when a parent is very much, very focused on, they see a lot of things on social media, right? So it is, and unfortunately there are a lot of accounts that I've seen a lot lately, maybe it's just the algorithm, but it's very deficit focus. It's all they see on their social media feed. You must get rid of your moral reflex to be able to move on to the next stage. You must have head control. You must do this. And that's very body structure and function when you look at it. It's very deficits driven. And so they're bombarded with these messages that they need to do more. There's the recreation, which sounds great, but they need to work on these elements of their child to fit them back together again almost so that they can function. Have you had encounters like that in terms of how to sort of counsel your way through and support a parent who's seen a lot of that online?
Yeah, we see it, and there is the frustration of the parents, understandably, that they also be in a situation where you have to wait for almost everything that is around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So sometimes it helps to say, well, while you're waiting, why not try something you have to wait less? Or even explore something in the community where you could be, where your child can be. So these are things that we do not offer in our center, but there is, for example, an adaptive swimming program in the city.
Right.
So why not explore that in the meantime? And sometimes that experience explains more than my words. I would not confront and say, well, that is not needed. I think, of course, it is needed, and there should be. And we should have more therapists, we should have more opportunities. But in the meantime, let's figure out what is beneficial for your child, where you can engage them at the most or the best, and what is most fun.
That is lovely. That is really lovely.
I just have this image as you're talking about, kids being in, like you said, adapted swimming programs or robotics club and having that connection, and then how that feeds into their well-being and development, which then obviously into their future as well, and it all coming together rather than, siloed into always individualized therapy, where, it just with the impact on their mindset as a child and how they develop to grow and see themselves in this world is massive. And like you said, we're not discounting therapy. Of course, we're passionate about what we do. Where, there's a reason we do what we do. But
while you're waiting, you're not really waiting. There's all these experiences that you can have and go and do. I love how you describe that. Yeah, it's wonderful. I was in your article as well. I was really delighted to see, towards the end of the article, you describe how this has really been integrated into the next EACD conference in 2026. Can you talk to me about that? I mean, I'm really excited. I just spoke to the conference committee and conveners for next year because we'll be there as a podcast, and I saw this and I'm like, oh, it's all lighting. But tell us more about that, Olaf.
I didn't have nothing to do with that. So it took us completely by surprise. So when they announced it in Heidelberg, I thought, wow, this is amazing. And I think it's such a worthy idea to make us think around, okay, what are the topics we're going to talk about? What are the topics we are going to discuss? And this so much fits in there. Like you can fit everything in under these themes of the efforts. So you can talk about fitness, you can talk about functioning, you can talk about friends and social activities and family supports, and also institutional supports, policies. And what is important for the children, and have the children's voice maybe as well there. And I think they have a lot of family partner input into the conference as well. So I'm really looking forward to that conference, and I posted online already that I registered the first day.
I was just going to say that. I saw that. I only saw the email come out yesterday saying you can now register. And then I saw you post. I was like, brilliant. Leading the charge. Yes. How fantastic is that? And, what a reflection on how the F words have been adopted. Because we all love a good framework. Let's face it. A very, very wise neurologist said to me many years ago now, and it's always stuck with me. It's like, Dana, we always need a good framework to conceptualize our thoughts. Mm-hmm. And there's just some frameworks that are better than others. And this as a framework is so fantastic. And I love that, from a conference perspective, you can imagine you want to know a bit more about, it just helps you to really organize your own thoughts for your own learning. It's really brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great example of impact that is not traditionally measured, right? So
that's right.
We have, I think that the paper has now 100,000 downloads.
Wow.
But being used as a framework for a conference for me is much more impressive and meaningful.
It's the conversation piece, isn't it? It really, it truly is, and it's how people are thinking, and what this means for the generation. And what you said before is true, because you hope it's slow to start off with sometimes, that it just accelerates, doesn't it? And this just becomes the norm, and we teach the future generations. This is just the norm. What a great platform to work off. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It just shows how the big shift. Yeah. This is where we're aligned. This is where we're headed. It's exciting.
Yeah.
So we've obviously got the F words, and you see it coming to conference, which is incredible. Mm-hmm. And how do you envision the F words evolving from here? Maybe in policy or education, or what are your thoughts on this?
Mm.
Yeah, we have here in Ontario, the province that I live here, we have the F words embedded in the policy for child development services. Wow. That was a result of, I think, many years of close collaboration with the ministry. So the developmental services are funded here by the Ministry of Community and Social Services. And I think discussing a lot of aspects. So they worked with us on the MPOC, for example, assessing the family-centeredness of the centers and so on. So they became aware early on of the F words. And when the ministry published a new guideline to access these services, they adopted the F words as a way to start from the strengths of the child, a way to get to know a family, to get to know the preferences of the family, and then with the family decide what would be the most appropriate services for this situation, and move a bit away from diagnosis-based programs. So this is the program for this diagnosis, that's the program for that diagnosis, and so on. And then with the result that often you need to have first a diagnosis to get into any of these programs. And as we know, many of the children don't even have a diagnosis. Mm-hmm. They have a delay or something. Right. It's not really clear what is going on. So this is for me the prime example how the F words can also shape how the services are being organized and how they will be delivered to families. A challenge that I still see is that we have here in Ontario and in other places as well, and I know also in Australia, a mixed system. So we have, on one side, we have these children treatment centers that work with the F words, but then we still have also an Ontario autism program that, as the name says, only works for kids with autism. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then if you have two different systems within a society, that is like a recipe for discontentment of one side or the other, right?
Of course,
because if I had the diagnosis of autism, I would be in this other program.
That's right.
And so on. So that is something. But I think it is in flux. I think in general worldwide the thinking in disability services is more non-categorical. Is understanding more that regardless of the underlying diagnosis, there are often needs that are very similar. That can be what I described in our recreational groups. There are in the robotics group, there are children that have an autism diagnosis, children with cerebral palsy, there are children with intellectual disability. They're all mixed in that same group, and each one delivers what they can do best.
Yeah.
And that is the focus, and learn also about all the other abilities and disabilities of their peers. So I think looking to the future, I hope that we can become more inclusive also within the disability field. And I always say, we always read that disability or people with disability are the largest minority in the world. So why are there not more services or more support for them?
Right.
They're always the last to be thought about. They're always the last that somebody, if you think of COVID and all that, they were always the forgotten ones. And one of the reasons is that there is not enough unity between the different disability groups.
Yes.
So and that comes again from coming from that medical model that you have a diagnosis and you want to fix something, you identify with the diagnosis, understand that. Yeah. But if you identify too much, you become a competitor to the others that also have needs, and you compete against each other for services. And if you would be united, you would be a group that could not be ignored at all, right? So I feel that maybe this approach to thinking more about the needs of people than their diagnosis can help them also to come more closer together and fight together for better services and supports.
That's so good. Gosh, that's a lot there.
I know.
That was brilliant. I'm just digesting it all. That was just wonderful. And it's so right. Like having the diagnosis, the search for the diagnosis is such a big thing at the beginning. If you can't find a diagnosis, you don't fit in anywhere. And then you really ultimately want to identify with a group, but then there's funding and there's services, and you can only get into certain services if you have this diagnosis. And you're right, that just drives this almost wild competition between diagnostic groups when it really should be united. What a important thought that we need to think about in our language, in our services. Yeah.
There's so much you said today that we will take with us. And there was one quote from your paper that I'd just like to read before we move on. And it was about having a mindset that allows, I guess, the child to sit in the driver's seat, and services that promote their participation in the domains of life they consider meaningful and important. And I think as a therapist, I remember that. Wow. The child is driving this, not me, who's asking the questions. They're driving it. And my job is to help find services that promote their participation in life, however they see it, considering it being meaningful, important. So if they're 2 years old, that may look very different to if they're 8. But just that allowing them in the driver's seat, that analogy is just, it's powerful.
It's really good. It's really, really good.
Thank you for all the things you've shared, Olaf.
Yeah, it's so wonderful.
Thank you.
So wonderful. Now, look, we're not finished yet.
Yeah, no.
We do need to go into our final segment, and he's put up his hand and he can't wait for it. I can see it already. He's ready, getting the sliders ready. So Olaf, we're going to finish up with Tell It to Ed. So Ed is our producer. He doesn't have a background in child health, but he has been listening. He has been taking notes and he's looking very intrigued at the moment. I can't wait for this one. So before we give Ed an opportunity to ask you a question, which I think he's very keen to, do you mind just summarising this work, this paper, in just 60 seconds or so? And Ed, you'll have time for one question. One question. So Olaf, take it away. Putting you on the spot there a bit.
So what I try to describe in this paper is that using the F words for child development is a way to be family-centered, it is a tool that allows you to identify the strengths of the child, the strengths of the family, and it allows you to engage in conversations to determine the meaningful goals for the child and the family before engaging in any therapeutic recommendations.
Gosh, you're so...
That was less than 60 seconds.
That was brilliant.
Very succinct.
That was so good. Gosh, that was really good. I put you on the spot as well, Olaf.
Not bad.
Ed, over to you.
Well, Olaf, normally I get to ask a question through the towards the very end of the episode, and it tends to be a layman's question. But I thought this time around I might just play devil's advocate just a little bit.
Oh, okay.
So,
always love these.
I know that that many clinicians and researchers kind of believe themselves to be, family and child focused, and I know we've kind of touched on people who are very strictly body structure and function focused or deficit focused. And the critique, I guess, about the F words, and this is my layman's understanding of this, is that some people would just say that it's just semantics. And I guess I'd be chasing a comment on how you would respond to that, because I think some people might just kind of dismiss the F words as like a feel-good language rather than real clinical change. And I'm just wondering what kind of comment you would make in that type of a conversation. Is there like a first introductory step on this kind of F words pathway or journey that clinicians and families can kind of take?
Oh, Ed, over to you, Olaf.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and by no means a layman's point of view. That is really sophisticated.
You're advancing here.
I've learned a lot over 250 episodes.
So, and you identified exactly the point. So some years ago, before I mentioned that policy change in the province of Ontario, and that was maybe 5-6 years ago. I'm not sure exactly when. The F words were 2011 or 12, the publication. So we spoke the F words. There was a campaign for International Cerebral Palsy Day that generated the poster. The first poster was done, and then these posters were translated, and people started hanging them up in their clinics, and thought that hanging up the poster makes them family-centered. And that is exactly what it does not do, right? Mm-hmm. And as you rightly said, Ed, you need to, they are only the, it's a framework. And you can also say, well, it's a frame without a picture in it, and you need to fill the picture with content. So it's more a starting point to get into a conversation from a different starting point, different way than the traditional, what is your main complaint? What is not working? What is the problem? And you start to asking, who are you? What do you like to do? Who lives with you? And just changing the ways, these questions might be asked anyways, but it's often important where you start, and then you might get eventually also to the complaints or the difficulties, but you can then situate them in the context. And we have, and that is not easy to do. And we have free courses on our website. So there's a F Words Foundation course that is free. It's recorded, and then there are also we collaborate a lot with treatment centers to implement the F words in a more systematic way with talks and allowing these questions also. I think these questions are really important because they help us every time. Again, if I get a question like yours, for example, for the next talk, I will be aware of that concern. And I think it's a very, very relevant concern that needs to be addressed. And the words are fun to look at, and they are cheeky, and that makes them easily to be approached, but then you need to get deeper, and that requires a bit more work and thought.
Yeah, that's really good. I love that, because you're absolutely right. I love any time you can make a big topic simple, and that takes skill to do so, right? But sometimes people can interpret it as too simple. Does it actually have, more profound meaning? But it really does, and you do need to help people through that journey. And yes, just putting up the poster doesn't mean you're doing it. It's the doing that means you're doing it. Good question, Ed.
Yeah,
you are definitely evolving. We might need to rename your segment for next season, I'd say. Olaf, thank you so very much for your time today. I know it's nighttime there for you. You've had a big day today, but we have absolutely enjoyed the conversation. As you can see, Marissa and I, it's the beginning of the day for us, but we'll be buzzing with excitement for the whole day now.
Thank you.
You're so sweet. Thank you so much. It was an amazing pleasure. You are a fabulous interviewer that make you just want to talk more and more and more. And that's what a good interviewer does. So thank you so much for all your appreciation.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so kind to say. Look, for all of our listeners, I hope you enjoyed that as much as we did. Please head over to our website, researchworks.net. We'll pop a link of this particular paper for you if you want to read it. Also, of course, we've got our ResearchWorks Academy. We'll do some specials on that coming up really soon so you can see what that site is all about. So you can actually see all the resources that we have laid out for you too, because like we said, sometimes just saying it doesn't mean we're doing it. We want to have the resources to be able to do it. And this is all completely free. You know, we have the same mindset as what CanChild is doing here, is wanting to support people with knowledge translation. So head over to those sites and hopefully they'll be really helpful for you. But for now, we'll talk to you all again next time. So we'll say goodbye. Bye, everyone. Have a great week.
Bye-bye.